From the possession of drugs to serious sexual misconduct charges, here are some of the most famous celebrities who have ended up in prison. Starting with the actress you're all probably familiar with, Michelle Rodriguez. She's one of the most phenomenal stars in The Fast and Furious, and if you're wondering what her crime is, you may not be that surprised when you find out. Ironically, she has always gotten herself into trouble by getting behind the wheel of a car. The first incident was in June 2004, when the actress and screenwriter pleaded not guilty to several charges, including hit and run, driving with a suspended license, and driving under the influence. Eventually, all of these charges resulted in a 48-hour jail sentence, but that's about it. She got to get away with it, which is a big deal. But it's not like she learned from her mistakes, because in 2005, she was filming Lost in Hawaii when she was detained on suspicion of DUI. And unlike the last time, this was a charge she ultimately pleaded guilty to. Consequently, she had to spend 5 whole days in jail, but things were about to get even worse for her. During a hearing in October 2007, Rodriguez admitted in front of the court that she had violated the terms of her probation, and after this, she was sentenced to 180 days in jail. That's a long time to be spending in prison, and even though she was going to complete her sentence, she luckily got released after only serving 18 days because of prison overcrowding. But she's not the only one who has managed to get off the hook easily. The next one's just plain unbelievable. It's Paul McCartney. Let's go back to 1980, when the all-time fan-famous singer went to Tokyo. And guess what he did? He took a whole bag of marijuana with him. I'm talking 7.7 ounces, which is a pretty gigantic amount to be carrying in your luggage. I don't even know how he thought he could get through security with that stuff, but this is where a little bit of fun cost this guy his entire Japan tour. He ended up having to spend 10 days in prison for this violation. And I don't even blame you for thinking that the sentence sounds a bit short, but things were very different back then, and it only worked out because his bandmates helped him get released. Shortly afterward, though, he got deported, which saved his from having to serve a longer sentence. But that's surely a lesson the poor guy must have learned, because while talking about it almost a decade later, he remembered how he hadn't even tried to hide it. The weed was right there, casually lying among his clothes, and even though it managed to scare the crap out of him when they pulled it out of his bag in customs, many people feel that this only made him appear even more iconic than ever. But then again, he's not the only celebrity to have been imprisoned for drugs. There's another one, Tim Allen.
You know, I have a Funicino. Put cocoa in it instead of coffee. Put a little peppermint in there if you have that. Chop up some cookies and sprinkles.
This man was arrested at an airport in October 1978. And mind you, this was more than a decade before he became popular as the face of home improvement. Just as he was leaving the airport, he was found in possession of a whopping 650 grams of cocaine. Now, this could have meant some pretty serious charges for the star, but he avoided life in prison by agreeing to a plea bargain, in which he provided the government with the identities of other traffickers in exchange for a sentence of 3 to 7 years. I mean, damn. Kinda sad that he had to become a snitch, but he also had to save his life, and it ultimately helped. Instead of having to serve a sentence that long, he was released after being in prison for only 2 years. And this is how the last man standing actor was granted release in June 1981. But even though this one sorted things out for himself, the next celebrity didn't know how to learn from her mistakes. Lindsay Lohan.
All they see is the spoiled daughter of the hotel magnate.
I'm coming in hot.
Now, she was probably one of the most stubborn alcoholic people you'd ever hear about. She simply didn't care. The first time she got arrested was back in 2007, and at that time, she had been drunk driving only a week before Poor Things was supposed to be filmed. Not only did she get arrested and sent to a treatment center for 45 days, but she also lost her role, because the show wasn't gonna risk it with a person that controversial, and I'm sure that sort of a double blow hurt a lot. But of course, she didn't learn from it because 2 weeks later, the actress was arrested once again for the same offense. Only that this time, there was a bit more to it. Not only was she drunk driving, but she also had cocaine on her, which was bound to land her in major trouble. That's not all. She was also driving with a suspended license. In the end, all of this led to countless court hearings, arrests, and rehabs. But apparently, she still couldn't keep herself out of trouble. Only 4 years after this, she ended up stealing a necklace from a jewelry store, and this time, she was sentenced to 4 whole months in prison. Seeing her criminal record, it almost feels like she's become a fan of the prison. And though this one might have sounded funny to some of you, the celebrity I'm gonna talk about next is deeply disturbing. Mike Tyson.
Heavyweight champion of the world, the one and only Iron Mike Tyson.
This man's crime was no tiny little mistake. The former boxer was arrested back in July 1991 for sexually assaulting an 18-year-old woman, all while he was staying in a hotel room in Indianapolis. For context, he was a lot older at the time, so there's no way he wasn't gonna get into big trouble. And in February 1992, the heavyweight champion was convicted on the charge. He was sentenced to 6 years in a federal jail facility, but eventually served even half of that when he managed to get a release. To this date, Tyson is compelled under federal law to register as a Tier 2 sex offender, and he has to do this for the rest of his life. And this is what happens when you're convicted for something that serious.
Give one to a police officer as a tip, right?
No, I didn't want him to arrest me.
Oh, all right. Then that makes it a bribe, I guess, doesn't it?
No, it wasn't a bribe.
The next person on this list will show you just how difficult it is to be rich. Mike Saratino.
Am I guilty of anything? I don't know. Do I stir the pot sometimes? Maybe.
He rose to become the second richest reality star in 2010, all thanks to the tremendous success of Jersey Shore. He had earnings of over $5 million, and he was trailing only Kim Kardashian. So it's pretty clear that the man was having the time of his life. Not for long though, because he soon found himself in a super sticky litigation situation in September 2014. This was after he was accused of tax fraud, because apparently he had yet to pay income tax on around $8.9 million in earnings. Now that's a pretty insane amount, but that wasn't all. Further tax evasion charges were filed against him in April 2017, and eventually he accepted a plea deal in January 2018 for 1 count of tax evasion. I mean, that was the best option he had. This was the only way he could minimize the damage.
A covert operation and get these boards on the bus safely so no one sees.
Get it right.
But not before he had to report to a New York correctional facility in January 2019 to serve an 8-month term, and only after that was he released in September of the same year. Seeing all of the crazy stuff that celebrities end up getting convicted for, you might start feeling like your life's a bit too normal. But there you have it, some of the most famous celebrities who have been incarcerated.
Name for the order?
Santa.
Sir, my job is hard enough.
Hope, hope, hope.